What's up? It's Tom. Thanks for being here. A little bit of a different format today because I wanted to be able to get this out as soon as possible and react to this news that Derek Falvey is no longer with the Minnesota Twins. I don't know if you could have told me any more shocking of news today, and I really only have the ability to record audio, so this is just an audio-only video. But again, just wanted to get a quick reaction while I'm still in shock here. Derek Falvey heavily involved at Twins Fest just this past weekend, so it's unthinkable. I mean, and this was a guy who probably had the most job security of anybody in baseball. It appeared to be. Obviously, that was not the case, apparently. But, you know, there's a few things going on here. I'm going to speculate. I want to make this clear. None of this is actual reporting, but I feel like from my position, being somebody who comments on the Twins but doesn't have, you know, isn't a traditional journalist, doesn't have, you know, sources to maintain, you know, a lot of the beat writers and things like that are going to avoid speculation, you know, and I understand why. They're professional reporters, and, you know, it would be to some degree unprofessional of them to speculate. As far as all the Twins are giving us is that it was a mutual decision, and we don't really know anything beyond that at the moment. Maybe we will learn more as time goes on. Hopefully there is some kind of clarity in what happened here, but if I'm envisioning, you know, I'm basically taking this approach of, what if you would have told me this yesterday? Hey, Tom, what's a situation in which you could imagine Derek Falvey no longer being with the Twins? That's the kind of the approach I'm taking now because we have such little information. Number one, and this is kind of a concerning thing to me, is if there was some kind of a health issue with Derek Falvey or someone in his family. So I really hope that's not the case. But that is how shocking this is. You really have to think of things from a bigger perspective to try to come up with an explanation. Again, really hoping that is not the case, and wishing Derek Falvey and his family well. Now, beyond that, how else could I envision this happening if Derek Falvey had the rug pulled out under him? If this was a Derek Falvey initiated thing, and this is basically him quitting, and they just don't want to frame things that way, that's a possibility. And how could I envision that? Well, maybe someone has said, we're going to go a different direction. We're going to continue on this rebuild path. We want you to trade Pablo Lopez and Joe Ryan. We want you to, you know, trade Ryan Jeffers or Byron Buxton potentially even. And, you know, if Derek Falvey is just not interested in he's been here a decade, and if he's not interested in going through an entire rebuild, you could maybe understand where that would be something that would motivate him. Another thing on the lines of having the rug pulled out from him, you know, maybe, you know, obviously we weren't really expecting the Twins to have a big payroll. It's so late in the offseason anyway. There's not that many guys you can really spend money on. But let's say Derek Falvey was expecting to have at least another maybe $10 million to play with. Obviously that's not much in 2026 baseball money. But you can do some things with that. And, you know, if it became clear that wasn't going to be the case, and this ownership group wasn't going to be even interested in going a little bit outside of their comfort zone, maybe that wouldn't be like a complete, you know, drop everything and quit moment, but that might be an eye-opening thing to Derek Falvey to just be like, you know, screw it. I've dealt with this for long enough. You guys have been limiting me for long enough that I'm just done. It's clear nothing's ever going to change, even though the ownership situation changed. Now, you would imagine that if that was the case, this would have happened before now. You know, this would have happened prior to Twins Fest. But, you know, maybe it's really hard to try to fig pieces together. But my third thought is probably the most likely one, in that this is a Tom Pohlad initiated change. Now, why that didn't happen earlier, why that didn't happen before Twins Fest, that's a tremendous question that I don't have an answer for, even in this scenario. But you know, Tom Pohlad is more of a business side guy. Derek Falvey was moving into more of the business side, with Jeremy Zoll being the GM. So now, of course, Jeremy Zoll is the guy in the front office, not just sort of Falvey's right-hand man playing second fiddle. He is the guy in the front office right now. And now Tom Pohlad is taking over the business side. You would think a lot of the duties that Dave St. Peter had formerly been the front man on, Tom Pohlad will be, at least for now. until maybe they hire someone new into that role. So, I figured the switch from one Pohlad to another was just basically procedural and that we weren't going to see much of any change. And maybe this is a hint that, well, we are. And Tom Pohlad being a business guy, I don't think he's going to be interested in extending himself to the baseball side in terms of making specific baseball decisions. But business guys have an idea of how a business should be structured. Business guys have an idea of how a business should be run. And maybe he had very different ideas from Derek Falvey, or maybe he just simply wanted to put his own fingerprints on the guts of the organization, basically. And, you could see that. When you see big businesses make changes from one CEO to next, you often see that new CEO bring in a bunch of new staff and let go of a bunch of old staff. So probably that is probably going to end up being what's revealed, is my guess. Again, I'm completely speculating here. Maybe that is inappropriate to do, but we're kind of left in a situation as the fan base to speculate and wonder what the heck did this come from and what's going on here. So that would be my biggest speculation, is that, again, fingers crossed that everything is going okay with Derek Falvey and his family, and he's not stepping away due to spending some more time with his family. But so beyond that, I'm thinking this is Tom Pohlad trying to imprint his own fingerprint on the organization going forward. Even beyond, I've been really hammering on the Twins Fest thing, and I do think that is a very curious element to the timing. But even beyond that, like, spring training is starting in a couple weeks. Like, this is a very strange time to be doing this. And I guess, again, from a fan's perspective, hopefully Jeremy Zoll is in a position to take on as much of the baseball side as he's going to need to now. It has always seemed like, even since Zoll was hired and Falvey was promoted, it has always seemed like Derek Falvey was still the lead guy in baseball ops, still really functioning as the general manager, basically. And that Zoll was more, even though he had the title, was more of like an assistant GM. So it's going to be interesting to see that dynamic and how he steps into the role and gets more opportunities himself. It'll be interesting to see how long Tom Pohlad is going to be the guy driving the business side. Just so many questions popping up and so many things that are just unknown at this time. It's so weird to think about this, that this is happening. I don't know if I've ever been this shocked about anything, and usually that's just because you have a pretty open mind, especially when trades go down. Everybody's available all the time. There's always discussions happening. Obviously the trade deadline, that was shocking at the extent at which they went. But we all knew they were going to sell at the trade deadline. We just didn't know it was going to go to that level. So that was certainly shocking. Absolutely. But this is on a different level. Derek Falvey no longer with the Twins. And I kind of thinking back to his legacy, and I touched on this a little bit in an article at Limestone Pipeline that was looking back at the last decade of Twins prospects on Baseball America's Top 100 list. Limestone Pipeline, by the way, me and Jamie Cameron's Patreon project we just started in December. Go check that out if you're interested in more prospect coverage. But one of the things I called out at the end of that article was how far pitching development has come under Derek Falvey in the last decade. And I think the Twins are really hitting their stride right now in that regard. And, it's not saying a ton. It says more about how little pitching there was and how poor they were at acquiring pitching and drafting and developing pitching in the second Terry Ryan era, in the early Target Field era. So I'm not giving him so much credit. A lot of the guys that they've brought in are via trade, but that give him credit for that too. It's not like you can take credit away for that. So I do think Derek Falvey has taken the Twins forward in his tenure, but I think they kind of hit a stall out point. They sort of plateaued, and maybe somebody else needs to come in and take them another step beyond what has happened in the Derek Falvey era. But when I look back on Falvey and how this all went down, I'm going to view him as a sympathetic figure. He didn't want to cut payroll. He didn't want to slide things back. He built the team that broke the playoff losing streak. If you think he was okay with sliding things back, no way. No way. So I have a lot of sympathy for him finally getting to a point where, again, it looked like the Twins could push beyond, their sort of middle of the road, and to have that, speaking of rugs pulled out from under you, to have that happen had to have been a really tough pill to swallow. And to his credit, from a fan's perspective, it's annoying that he talks so much without saying anything. But to his credit, as like an employee of the Twins, as an employee of the Pohlads, he has been nothing but a good soldier. And that's why I always understood why they retained him. That's why I always understood why they promoted him. Because he's always said the right thing. He has always said the right thing. He's always, and again, it drives me nuts when he dances around questions and again, he talks a lot without saying much. But if you're looking at things from an employer standpoint, that's beautiful. That's a thing of beauty if you have a guy who you're screwing over pretty much from being able to do his job to the best of his ability. And he's going out there and not throwing you under the bus when he has so many, reason to. Again, I think, from a fan perspective, there's still a lot to be desired from the Derek Falvey era. Some highs for sure, but some lows. But, if you think of, again, try to put yourself in the mindset of Twins ownership of the Pohlads, I don't know if you can expect more from someone working from you than Derek Falvey. He's also really known for his work ethic and just putting in long hours, as most baseball executives are. These guys work like crazy. So again, just sort of shook by this news. I can't say necessarily that it's going to be bad news. Again, I think the Twins have plateaued under Derek Falvey. I think when that happens, it can be beneficial to bring in some new blood, some new perspective. The timing of this is very poor. I don't, any kind of hirings you would think would have been happening already, and any kind of, up and coming staff that you'd be looking for aren't really on the market anymore. But, baseball teams are usually pretty good about allowing their staff to interview for promotions. They don't like it when people try to leave for similar jobs, but a lot of these teams are great about allowing their people to go out and look for promotions and then let them leave, basically let them out of their contracts with whatever team they're in to pursue a better situation. So we have to just sit here and hope that that's the case, or else, we're going to be in a holding pattern. I'm curious what's next. Again, just trying to figure out why this happened, and the timing of it is really hard to figure. Hopefully we learn more from, again, those beat reporters, those people on the inside with sources with the Twins. Hopefully they are able to give us some more insight into what's going on here. But, just sitting here minutes after the announcement, just really scratching my head and trying to figure out what's going on. And again, we're in a situation, and in this platform here, we can speculate. So what are your thoughts? What do you think might be going on in the background here? If you have any theories, we're going to put our tinfoil hats on. It's okay. It's all right to do that. I think we all need a distraction right now. So maybe let's just throw some ideas out there against the wall and see if we can come up with some things that might make sense. Because, there is a chance we never really get any insight into why this happened and why it happened now. We'll just have to wait and see. But thanks for checking this one out. Really appreciate you. We'll talk again soon.